You were a part of the first Cobra squadron.
It was the first Cobra company and the third corps. You had I Corps up here on and two corps, third corps, and then the Delta. We got them in April of '68, and although we had 800 hours or more of gunship time, you had to go to Benoit to the Cobra training team, and you had to go to school for a month just to learn how to fly that. It was different. And matter of fact, I was the third class to go, and I was the first one to graduate from that thing, from our unit. And one of them was a Cobra pilot from the States. And so after the school was over, the major that was in charge, he said, "Well, what would you do, or what did you dislike, or what did you like most?" I said, "Have I graduated?" And he said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, first thing you do is assign an instructor to the student. Don't give him a new instructor every day, because he spends half the day trying to figure out how that instructor wants him to fly the aircraft instead of learning what the aircraft will do." And he says, "Okay." So they changed that, and the school went from about a 10% graduation rate to a 60% graduation rate, just like that.
Is that right?
Yeah. But the Cobra was only 36 inches wide. Matter of fact, you had to wear a shoulder holster because you couldn't get your butt in the seat with a 45 on your hip. Right. But they were new, and you could load them up with. We loaded ours with 76 rockets and 16,000 rounds of minigun. You had a revolving cannon in the turret. And that worked for us, and we never had a malfunction with them that I know of, and it always brought us back home. Whereas opposed to the Hughes scout ships, the 086 that looked like an egg with a stick in the back, the first one of those we had, the guy says, "Watch this, these are really maneuverable." He took off and the skid fell off of it, so we had to stack bags up and let him come in and land on it. The Cobras worked with scouts. Gotcha. You gathered all of your information, and also when somebody called during the night, rain, sleet, whatever, you went. I had a shade more than 2,000 combat missions, and I never refused a mission, and none of my men ever refused a mission. You were scared most of the time, but that's what we did.
You mentioned just fear of it. I mean, what that was, I don't even know if you can explain it, but just, the first time you have to fly into the combat zone, and kind of the how you process that, how you try to, get up the nerve to complete that mission when you're scared like that.
Well, especially in the Cobra, once you learn how to fly it and learn what it'll do, that's probably the most fun you've ever had with your clothes on. It's a super aircraft, and the new ones they have now will do even more. They have more horns and whistles and electronic doodads on it. You had a turret up in front with a gun in it, and your co-pilot sat in the front seat, and he had a sight. And if you were flying in this direction and somebody shot at you, he would put the sight on the target and pull the trigger. Well, the sight would measure the distance between the target and the gun, the angle of deflection, and the speed of the aircraft, and it may be firing here, and the bullets would curve around and go in there. Some of them, ours didn't, but some of the Cobras had a 40 millimeter grenade launcher in the nose, and somebody would shoot at you, and you just go pa-doop, 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 and put it back, and that guy thought, well, man, you missed, and all of a sudden, here they'd come right in the hole, and that was super. We were amazed with it and impressed, and every one of them brought us back home.
I want to talk about the night of the story.
That was the 18th of June, 1968.
How long had you been flying missions at that point?
See, I got out of school in April, May, June, about 6 weeks.
So pretty early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a call that Wildcat 2 was needed some help to go to the village of Apgocon, which was about 15 clicks northeast of Saigon, and you didn't know where they were because it was like flying in an inkwell. But on your FM radio, you've got a position there where you can put it on home, and when someone transmits to you, a needle will point to them. So you turn to it. You fly down that needle and tell them to count to 10 or whatever, and when you pass over them, that needle will switch around in opposite direction, so you know exactly where they are. You don't know where the hell you are, but you know where they are. And there's no street signs or anything like that out there. So.
And this was in Tariq Corps where this happened?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so when we got there, they said, well, here's the problem. Said, we were supposed to recon this village here and around this village for a week, and they were waiting on us, and they got surrounded in a big rice paddy by a reinforced company of North Vietnamese and Viet Cong troops. And so they were outnumbered 20 to 1 to start with. And so we found them, and we went to work clearing a hole for them. And but we began to run out of rockets and run out of ammunition, and you couldn't see anything. So the village was to the north. I called the artillery and said, drop some magnesium flares, parachute flares, over that village. That'll backlight the village and throw a little light out here so I can kind of see what I'm doing. And the bursting height was 1,500 feet, so it would come down and light up the village before it went out. And on into the mission, I was out, I had 100 rounds left of minigun, and my fuel light was on. That means you got 20 minutes to go somewhere, and that's all. But I needed to think of something innovative to pull these guys out, because they were going to die. There were 4 of them, and they were surrounded by about 60 people in a ring. And I told the patrol leader, I said, "You still have a compass that works?" "Yes, sir." I said, "All right, blow your claymore mines, and when you do, start running on an azimuth of 135 degrees. Run out in what you think is 100 yards and lay down." So he said, "Yes, sir." And I saw him go boom, 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 boom. And my gunner came around with his turret on 135 degrees and blew the last 100 rounds into that circle where there were circles, so it made an opening. They ran through it, and I turned out all of my lights and flew on 135 degrees, which I thought was 100 yards, and flared and landed and set it down in the dark. And then I nearly sat down on top of them. And I didn't have to say anything to them. I just opened the canopy and said, "Did you call for a taxi?" And two of them jumped on the skid, and a guy in California painted that, knowing the story, and he painted it. Two of them jumped on the far side. They were sitting on the skid holding onto the strut, and these two jumped on the rocket pods. And that was my co-pilot who controlled the turret gun, and that was me. So we picked them up, and the co-pilot says, "Well, sir, so what we going to do with them?" I said, "Oh, hell, I forgot about that." So I called my base station, and they said, "Well, A Troop is down at the water company pulling securities to take them down there." So we flew down the river and called toward Saigon and called them on FM, and that data pointed right to them. So we went in and sat down, and they got off and walked out in front of the ship. And then they disappeared. And later we got to be best friends with two of them. And one, Bob Elsner, he was from Pennsylvania, I think, and he died, Agent Orange complications. But Dave Hill, he's from Nevada, I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, we correspond every day, and they decided, "Well, you got a Silver Star for this mission," and I said, "Well, I didn't know anything about that. I was in Germany 10 months later." And the colonel called and said, "Did you wear your greens today?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Get over here to the trophy room. The Deputy Secretary of Defense is here to present you with a Silver Star." And I said, "Are you sure?" And he says, "Get the hell over here, Taylor." So I did, and sure enough, Vance, not Vance Packard, I'll think of it in a minute. Don't ever get old. Don't ever get old, Josh. He did. He pinned a Silver Star on me. Well, the 75th Rangers decided, and the 75th Regiment is all LERPs and behind the lines and snake eaters and stuff like that. They decided that I should have had the Medal of Honor for picking them up. And so they petitioned the Department of Human Services and the Army, and they said, "We'd like to do this." And they said, "Well, you need 2 eyewitness statements other than mine." And Dave Hill gave one, and he said, "Everybody else is dead." "Well, don't care, you got to have 2. "Well, there's one, Gerald Patty, that we've been looking for the last 2 years. And we found 7 or 8 of them, but none are him." And I had a co-pilot in my front seat. He's still alive, and he's living in Costa Rica. I know the province, but I don't know the town. And so I can't get one from him either. So if we can't find Gerald Patty, the next step is to fly to Saigon, get a Jeep, an interpreter, and a map and go find a survivor of that battle and take his statement and have it translated, sworn to, and notarized and all of that, and submit that to the Army. And if that doesn't work, they're going to take the package and go to the White House and give it to President Trump. So whatever you decide, sir.
So you still haven't found that second person? I didn't realize that the second person still has not been found.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they thought they had found Gerald Patty somewhere. Was it the wrong Gerald Patty?
Yeah.
Oh.
They did. They said, we got numbers in Nashville. So I went to Nashville and called those numbers, and they said, no, they're disconnected. And I said, well, can you tell me the address or when they were disconnected? If it was last Tuesday, he probably bought a cell phone. If it was 12 years ago, it's a cold trail. No, I can't tell you that. That's a matter of privacy. Okay. So, yeah, we found 2 in Missouri that didn't pan out, 1 in New Jersey, a little bit different spelling, and it didn't pan out. So they're still working on it.
But at one point, according to the story, he's from Maryville, Tennessee.
He is. And one of the guys and I are going to go to Maryville, try to get into voting records, which they won't let you, try to get into high school records, which they won't let you, talk to IRS. I bet the sheriff would tell you if he'd ever been arrested.
Right.
So we'll just spend a couple of days up there, and if that doesn't work, I don't want to go back to Vietnam, but we may have to.
Have you talked, I'm sure there are Vietnam veterans in that area. Have you talked to any of those guys to see if there's any connection? Did they grow up with them, knew them in the past, anything like that?
They suggested that we contact the newspaper because whenever a local boy does something, they always write in the local paper. So I would imagine they do. I planned that trip 3 different times. But once I had to have a cancer treatment, and once I had to have a biopsy done on the kidney, and I just, like when we finish, I've got to go to the doctor this afternoon, and then tomorrow I've got to go.
You told me you were expecting a surgery, but you had to find a surgeon that could do the procedure? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
they found one, but he retired or quit or he disappeared. So they're trying to find a surgeon who knows what a kidney looks like and approximately where it's located in the body.
It's helpful. You need that.
Yeah, you need that knowledge. So I don't know, but my urologist seems to think that the kidney cancer is not as important as the prostate, and my medical oncologist says, yeah. So the prostate cancer will kill you before the kidneys do. He said, we can jerk a kidney out and throw it away. But he says, your PSA keeps going up. And I just got off of a 6-month tour of chemotherapy. And all your hair falls out, your eyebrows, eyelashes, even the hair in your nose falls out. And but this is hair from June to today.
Right.
June, July, August, September. That's what it looks like after 4 months. But if I go back on chemo, it'll look like a grape again, which is all right. I don't care.
Is that through the VA or is that a private doctor?
No. The VA gives you a physical once a year and says, "Are you still being treated?" And yes, okay, we'll come back and see us in a year. And no, they won't even give you medicine unless the VA doctor is your primary medical oncologist. And I said, well, do you have one? And they said, no. And I said, well, duh. And they said, well, just do the best you can do. And they try. I've got friends in in Arizona that died just waiting to get into the hospital in Phoenix. And that's not right.
Let me ask you about that rescue. From what I understand from that was the first known time that type of rescue was done with the Cobra. Is that correct?
Yeah. That they'd only been in service 6 weeks or so.
And through the entire war, there were only a handful, right? If any.
None that I know of, but it's possible.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Records and all that.
Yeah.
If they kept records of that kind of thing. But it's the only one that you're aware of.
Yeah. And that was the thing to do. That's what we did, and that's what needed doing.
Let me ask you this thought. Clearly, it was a very dangerous thing to do. You knew that, and this is probably something you thought about every time you went into combat, is that
I have seen people who were captured and tortured, and hell no, there was no doubt in my mind. I just had to create a diversion to get their mind off of shooting at me to go in and get them. And we went in, plopped down, and we weren't on the ground more than 10 seconds. And then I took off, got up to 1,500 feet and cut my lights on, and then they started shooting at us for sure. And then flew them down to Saigon and let them off. And
well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that I'm always struck by just the humility and the selflessness of combat vets, of their ability to turn whatever switch that is off in their head and go in there and take care of somebody. Like, what is that? Where does that come from?
That's your job. That's what you do. And I told my men, you never leave a man on the ground. And we never did. And I never lost a man. Not one. I lost some ships. But they'll take a bulldozer and push that off in a corner and give you another one. But that's just what you do. And I told the men, if it's a question of you running out of gas, just land close to them and we'll pick you up when we pick everybody else up. Don't you ever come back and say, well, we almost did, but no. And to a man, I think everybody in our outfit felt the same way. And we had a special love for the LRPs, the Long Range Reconnaissance people. They're weird. Their faces were painted green and black. And a couple of times when I got shot down, and that's a different ball game, it wasn't long before 6 little guys came walking out of the woods with their faces all painted. And they protected us until we got the ship slung out. And that's what they did.
You took a good dozen bullet holes in your ship that day, didn't you?
The crew chief counted 16. That's what duct tape's for. You shine a flashlight in there and see where it comes out and see if it hit the tail rotor drive shaft or anything important, and then you put a piece of duct tape on the inside and one on the outside and go on. Eventually, when it goes in for service, they'll replace a panel or whatever. But yeah, hell, they'll fly with duct tape on them.